Prepare for action. It's believed great white sharks live as long as 70 years. Hookjaw has been around 40 years, born as it was on February 14th, 1976. That day, the first issue of Action went on sale in the UK. The publisher IPC had a long and illustrious history, but they had never produced anything like this, a weekly anthology title. Most UK comics were, at the time, aimed at the boys' market. This was nothing new. IPC had produced war comics, funny comics, sports comics, and mixes of all these genres and more, but Action was something else. The creators behind it were Pat Mills and John Wagner, writers who were destined to achieve true greatness when they were instrumental in the birth of 2000 AD. That title would go on to produce some of the greatest and most influential comic creators ever. At this time, however, Mills and Co were busy developing a new kind of boys comic, one that did not compromise in its content and unashamedly ripped off popular contemporary movies. The anthology's lineup included Dredger, whose eponymous hero was modelled very much on Dirty Harry, although rather than being a cop, he was a member of the British Secret Service, giving the series an international flavour. There was also Death Game 1999, a hugely popular strip emulating Rollerball, another successful movie very much in the bread and circuses mould, where a failing society is blindsided by increasingly violent sports. However, the social commentary was largely overlooked in favour of brutal violence. The heroic sportsmen of Rollerball replaced by prisoners battling it out on a giant pinball table. Hellman of Hammerforce took the war genre and adopted a very unconventional approach, one already established by Sam Peckinpah's Cross of Iron. Britain had a long history of war comics, but this may have been the first time that the protagonist was a German tank commander fighting animal hordes of Russians on the Eastern Front. A German good guy was unprecedented, while the Eastern Front had been largely overlooked in the Anglo-centric genre. Another strip pretty much guaranteed to cause controversy was Kids Rule OK, the central premise of which was a disease that kills all adults across the world, leaving gangs of teenagers to fight it out in a brutal battle for survival. While very much a modern for its time take on the Lord of the Flies, the story was undeniably influenced by the growing problem of hooliganism that was running rampant for the UK's national sport, football, or soccer if you will. However, there is little doubt that the strip that Action was most remembered for is Hookjaw. The year prior to the release of the comic had seen Jaws become an international smash hit, while also inventing the summer blockbusters and changing the nature of cinema forever. It also made sharks public enemy number one, so it's hardly surprising that writer Pat Mills was keen to tap into the success of Jaws, which even a year after its release was still terrifying the general public. Mills, however, had a slightly more misanthropic and environmentally friendly view of humanity than Jaws author Peter Benchley. While the shark was an unmitigated killer, it had good reason to be. Corrupt, unscrupulous oilmen were ruining the shark's home while making themselves available as tasty snacks for Hookjaw and his cadre of shark friends. The list of influences defining Action was unusual enough, hardly fit for a children's comic, where war, for instance, was a bloodless, glorious affair. But the creators of this new comic knew what young boys liked, blood and violence, and they got just that by the bucket load. Hookjaw had no problem tearing women and children apart and in graphic detail, initially provided by Spanish artist Ramon Sola. The same bloody philosophy permeated the entire comic, and it wasn't long before it started to attract the attention of social conservatives and the media. National newspapers, including The Sun, with its topless page 3 models, took exception to the attack on the morals of the nation's youth being conducted by Action, which they dubbed the Seven-Penny Nightmare, a nod to a similar campaign against the Victorian Penny Dreadfuls. The comic's publisher, John Sanders, was even given a roasting on national TV. Concerned with the mounting and increasingly strident condemnation of the comic, IPC made efforts to bring Action and its anarchic creators into line. When that failed, they pulled the plug, putting Action on hiatus on October 16, 1976, even going as far as pulping the next issue. That, however, was not the end of it. On November 27th, Action was relaunched, but as a pale imitation of its former self, helmed by new creators. The blood, gore and violence were sanitised, and the teeth of the stories defanged. In doing so, IPC removed everything that had made the comic a huge hit with its readers. The title limped on for another year, but was finally cancelled. Action did live on though, and was held in great esteem by many UK comics creators and professionals. Pat Mills and John Wagner will go on to launch and write for 2000 AD, creating some of its most legendary characters, while employing many more creators who were inspired by Action. and at the forefront of their inspiration was one of the greatest strips in British comics history, Hookjaw.